Before we get rolling with today's episode, I want to take a second to tell you about Sharp Training. Snyder Health Recovery and Performance Training is an online training platform to help washed up athletes look, feel, and move better. We offer several different group options catered to your needs, interests, and goals with new programs delivered each month through the TeamBuilder app. Features include video demonstrations, 24/7 messaging and feedback, and access to the Sharp Edge, a comprehensive guide to upgrade your diet, sleep, and life. Use the code PODCAST in all caps to get 50% off your first month when checking out a program. Iron sharpens iron, so let us help you become your sharpest self. Now let's go. And we're back with another edition of Sharp Talk. This week joined by yet another relative from the mother's side of the family, Hoogeveen side. Got Andrew Hoogeveen joining us, former athlete, PT, strength coach, just wears many hats, man of many trades. So, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks, fellows. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Boys, how you doing?
Great.
Doing well.
Sad.
Coming off a tough Hawk loss.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It was a good day in
That's the way it
Kennesaw.
goes.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
First
Rabbits
Sunday
won.
NFL football. Yeah, Rabbits won.
They did.
Love to see that.
Did you watch the
See that.
Oklahoma State game? It was Oklahoma State, I believe.
I did watch the Oklahoma State game. It was fun. Oklahoma State's a good team.
Yeah.
And they returned 20 starters. They had talent both sides of the ball. I knew that, SCSU was going to have to get pressure on the quarterback, and that was a tough sledding for them. And
Yeah.
that's a tough team. Tough atmosphere. I think they showed some good stuff. The offense still had lots of yards, and so I think they did all right. But yeah, that's Oklahoma State. That's big time ball, and
How do you
you
feel?
got to show up and do well.
How do you feel? You might have a good gauge on this. I'm just curious. Like, they lost so many good players, like especially up front. I know it's just a couple games, but do you think that they're similar to years past? Do you think that maybe those other teams were a tad better? I'm just curious.
Well, it's obviously hard to replace NFL guys. When you got Mason McCormick and Isaiah Davis, those guys were drafted. Greenfield, how many starts did he have? And
Yeah.
tremendous career. I think it's hard to replace those guys, but I think they're bringing in talented guys. Have you seen their recruiting class that they've signed for this year? They have 3-star guys that will have Power 4 offers
Yeah.
that picked SDSU. So I think they're reloading with talent. I think it's just a continuity thing, an experience thing, all the above.
Yeah.
I think that Incarnate Word team was really good last night. They had a lot of talent. They were fast, so I think, for them to get that win, I think was really important.
Yeah. Well, South Dakota State being a big part of your background, which if you want to get into your athletic background growing up, college, what you're doing now, just go ahead and tell everyone about yourself.
Sounds good. Well, I grew up in Sioux Center. I was a 4-sport athlete, played football, basketball, track, baseball. I was fortunate to have really talented age group at my school. We had a lot of success, won state championship basketball. I placed at the state track meet and hurdles a couple years in a row. So we had a lot of success growing up. And I think, as my friend group, that's kind of what we lived for with sports. When we worked, in season, we were, grew up playing basketball in the driveway, or we were, playing football. So it's just what we did. We didn't know any different. So when we were competing in different ways. And I think, that always raises the level for everyone, especially when those guys you're going against are good. When we played on a state championship basketball team, that I think some of our reserves who didn't play much would have started for other teams in the conference. And when you're practicing against guys like that, Chad Keideman, All-American at Northwestern, Tyler Reichley, still on the top receiver list at Northwestern. You have Greg Schmidt, played tight end at Drake. We had talented guys.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience. And, that led me to South Dakota State, where I was able to be a 3-year starter, outside linebacker and safety, and had a really fun career there. Got to travel all over the United States and play games. And, it was a fun time because we were there. I was there during the transition from D2 to D1. The years I played, we were not able to make the playoffs. So we had to kind of shift our mentality a little bit to, we weren't playing for the playoffs. We weren't playing for a national championship. We knew that, we knew that going in, we knew that when we signed. So, our mentality shifted that, we're going to compete and we're going to compete for a conference championship. In my senior year, we were able to do that. We beat NDSU last game of the year. They had beat the
Where
Minnesota
at?
Gophers that year. They were a loaded team, and it was just a lot of fun to do it in front of the home fans and take home that conference championship. And it's just kind of a nice way to end that career. So it was a lot of fun. I got to play for Coach Stig, who's become legendary, as you guys know. And I got to play with Jimmy Rogers, who's the coach now. So, that brings, I still feel a lot of strong ties into that program because of those things. And, I'm still diehard Jackrabbit. I've been to all 3 of the national championship games over the past few years here, which has been a blast. And it's been fun to watch that program continue to ascend.
For sure. You can kind of take that into what you're doing now. Obviously went to school. You went to school, were you always planning on being a PT, and what does your career path kind of look like since then?
I went in undecided, I think, my first year, but I think, I think most athletes, when you deal with nagging injuries and stuff like that, I think it's most physical therapists, once you've gone through a sports related injury of your own, that's where it kind of sparks your interest, that this might be something that I want to do. And I think that's kind of what happened for me. So I became, focused and set on physical therapy, probably my second or third year at SDSU, which led me to University of South Dakota physical therapy program. And I was there from 2008 through 2011. Graduated with my doctorate in physical therapy. And that's how I became a physical therapist. And that kind of led me to where I'm at now.
Perfect. Taking it back to the college career, when did you came in as a safety, and how long were you a safety, and when did that position change come?
So this is kind of a funny story. I came in as a quarterback. Eric Eidsness
Oh, really?
actually recruited me to SDSU as a quarterback.
He was there. He was there when you were there?
He was there. Shout out to Eidsness for his big win yesterday over Notre Dame. He's a quarterback's coach at Northern Illinois now. So shout out to him for that big win.
Doubt.
He was the OC there, recruited me to play quarterback, and then he left to be a head coach, I think after my first year, to be the head coach at Southwest.
Okay.
And then that was the point during the spring ball of my freshman year. There was a good quarterback in the class above me, Andy Cardews, great athlete, outgoing kid. That we kind of knew that he was going to be the guy, and he was a class above me. So they offered me an opportunity to go and try my hand at defense in spring ball. So I was happy to do it. And actually at that time, I was probably 185 pounds. They moved me to corner. And then after the spring and summer, I kind of gradually kept gaining weight a little bit and then got up to 205. So I moved to free safety and then to strong safety. And then they didn't know where else to stop. So then they moved me to Sam Backer. And that's where I kind of was able to get my foot in the door on special teams. And then when my first year starting, I got to start at Sam Backer, where I started for 2 years. And my last year I switched to strong safety. But when I was playing Sam Backer, I was 6'3", 205. So I was light and lean and small, but I was kind of there during the transition too, where, we're talking a long time ago now. So everyone was, a lot of the teams were transitioning to more of the spread offense.
Yeah.
So I played more of that nickel Sam position where I would go to the passing strength. So it was almost like I was, playing, on top of the number 2 receiver. I got to do a lot of fun blitzing type stuff. And, it was just it was a great position to play. It was the playmaker's position really. So it was just kind of fun. Me and my buddies joked that it was the money backer position because we got to do a lot of different things. So
that era of South Dakota State football, I know we went to a lot of games. It was really fun, whether it was you or like Chris Tracy. We went up there a lot. It was like, I don't know, kind of your best look at like a Division I environment, kind of that was within driving distance, and like Tim's like, if there's a game, we're going to it,
Oh,
regardless.
for
So
sure.
so
Yes.
it's just
I do know Tim.
it's just the way
Yes.
whether it's Northwestern or a good high school game or
Right.
South Dakota State, especially if we have family playing. But I just remember the field, like that was in the grass days of
So
Brookings,
different.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I just
Old
remember
Yep.
how
field.
muddy you guys got playing, and it was just like
Oh, yeah.
a totally
The
different field than it has now. The stadium now is
Coughlin
beautiful and all that.
alumni,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, the evergreen
the
trees in the
evergreen.
end zone.
Yeah.
I played some
That was the
nasty,
best.
nasty tackle football games back there.
We
Back
played a
on that
lot of
practice field,
football.
we played a lot.
Yeah.
You know, though, back then, you look at what it is now, and it's, I took my son to a game last year, and he's like, "Dad, you played here?" And I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
kind of,"
Yeah.
it wasn't because it looks so different now. But
Yeah.
we took so much pride in like being the blue collar guys.
Yeah.
We had, that's what our
Yeah.
team was made of, was all blue collar guys. We took pride in, we're, at that time we didn't have the best stuff. We were meeting in trailers. We weren't meeting
Yeah.
in the, fancy
I remember that.
places that they have now.
Mhm.
We were meeting in trailers. We had the same weight rooms as every other athlete.
Mhm.
We didn't have air conditioning.
Yeah.
So we took pride in that we were going to be, outwork you. We were going to be tough. We were going to do what we needed to do. We weren't going to make mistakes, and we knew we had to do those things to win.
Mhm.
And fortunately, we were able to come out on the winning end a majority of the time. So it was a great experience. I love it.
Yeah.
Coming out of DPT school, starting at like Spencer, and then
Yeah.
starting your own business, and just like how you feel like you grew from coming out of PT school and evolved in your career.
Right. Yeah. So I went to USD for physical therapy school. So I got to go to both of the schools in South
Little
Dakota.
rival,
Yeah, I had a great experience at USD too. I have nothing but positive things to say about my experiences at both schools. They were excellent. I enjoyed my time at Vermilion, and I took that first job at Spencer Hospital, and I didn't really know anyone there, and I went and worked there for 6 years, and Spencer was great. It's a nice town. It was a great first job because I got to dabble in a little bit of everything. As a physical therapist, there's so many different like niches that you can get into. It's almost like a nurse where you can specialize in so many different things. And I think as a physical therapist, initially coming out of school is really good for me to see a little bit of everything. Cause I literally did, I saw patients in the hospital, outpatients coming into the hospital. I did home health, I did aquatic therapy. I did skilled nursing, you name it. I did wound care. So we did bits and pieces of everything. So, I think there's a lot of value into that as a young professional, not to just figure out what you really enjoy, but also to figure out what you don't enjoy at the same time.
Yeah.
So, I think that was a really good first job for me. I love the people that I worked with. I still am in contact with many of them there. And while I was there, that's when I received my certification in ART, active release techniques. And I was enjoying that, and I learned a lot, and I was seeing really good success with it. So I kind of maxed out on my education there. And I'm one of 183 ART elite providers in the United States. So that's something I'm proud of because I put a lot of time into it, and a lot of hands-on experience and a lot of studying. And I'm able to use that education to help my patients now. And that kind of the ART led me into starting my own business. So after I left Spencer, after we had my son Jackson, we wanted to get closer to home. And, we kind of just, let me tell you guys this too. When you have kids, if you and your future spouses choose to have children, it's important to, be around some family.
Yeah.
Because family support when you're raising kids is enormous.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so valuable. So when we moved back to Orange City, being close to my family, I just knew that I was going to have to figure something out, or I was going to have to, find a different job. And I used the ART education that I had and started my own business. And I was providing soft tissue, like preventative type treatments at, I think I peaked at like 8 different companies. And that was, I started my own business as an independent contractor doing that. And I called them my industrial athletes. And you guys can all kind of attest to this. You think of, when you think of these industrial athletes, you think of your athletes that you're training, you're thinking of your, total work volume, right? How much stimulus are you giving these muscles? Well, you think about these people who work 10, 12-hour shifts, and they're literally lifting 40 pounds from here to there for 10 of those hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You think about that working volume and how much, what that can do to their body as far as wear and tear and stiffness. Or just like poor mechanics and what kind of problems can develop from there. So I took a lot of pride in treating my industrial athletes and trying to get them to feel as good as they possibly could, so that when they were done with work, that they could go home and play with their kids and have fun and feel good and not have to just go home and lay down the rest of the night and be like, oh, I'm too tired. I hurt too much. I'm just going to go home and I'm going to eat and sleep and do it all again the next day. I wanted them to feel good, and I wanted them to be able to do those things that they want to do, those things they enjoyed after work too.
Can you explain that ART a little bit? You can get nerdy, or you can break it down to like a third grade level if you want.
Okay.
Maybe a little of both.
ART, active release techniques. It's a trademark technique. It started out of Colorado Springs with Dr. Leahy out there. He was training Olympic athletes at the training facility there, and was noticing like repetitive soft tissue, I don't know if you want to call it impairments or restrictions or whatever you want to call it. And he developed I like to describe it, it's kind of like a combination of massage and stretching combined. You try to isolate specific tissues that feel either tight or restricted, and then you take them from the shortened position to the lengthened position through a specific manual tension, with the goal of reducing any stiffness in that area and therefore pain as well.
Sick.
What else you want to know about it? Sorry, I don't know if I explained that very well.
How much do you?
No, that was great.
How much of it do you do now? Like, do you still do that with some of your athletes, like within sessions and stuff like that, or not as much, or like what kind of role does that play now? Yeah,
I still it depends, because I see such a wide variety of individuals here. Obviously with like my post surgicals, last year I was rehabbing 10 ACLs here at this gym. Unfortunately, I don't like to see that many, because that means that there's a lot of people with ACL injuries around the area. But with the post surgicals, I don't do as much, but I have a lot of, people that just come to see me with ache pains.
Yeah.
I'm competing, I'm feeling this, I'm having this knee pain here, I'm having this soft tissue discomfort here, or, like a lot of like overhead throwing athletes, if they're having shoulder soreness,
Yeah.
I use a lot of ART to, let's isolate, try to figure out which tissues are restricting you, and let's work through those. Let's go through some of those ART protocols and see if we can't get that movement feeling better. And you'd be surprised with how often we can find, teres major, one of your powerful internal rotators with those overhead throwers, I find all the time, or a subscapularis that can be tight and restricted and really affect their, ability to throw without pain.
Yeah. Maybe talk a little bit more about what you're doing now. I'm even curious too, just like
Sure.
what the type of patients you're working with, the hours too. Like, I know sometimes you do some of the youth training stuff, which I'm curious how you manage that with kids and everything. Like, I know that's one thing that I run into is like working around the school day and stuff like that. So curious how that's affected you, and you just dive into what you do now a little bit, and that might lead to something else.
Sure. I'll kind of talk about the transition, the transition I had.
Yeah.
So there was like 3 or 4 years I was just doing the ART corporate contracts. It wasn't ever like my plan to do that. It just kind of how it evolved. I was having good success with the companies, and these small towns, a lot of HR and safety coordinators are all very well connected. And when you do good things at one company, the word spreads, and it just kind of ended up that I was at 8 different companies, and I did that for a few years, and then I opened my own cast practice, just because I wanted to get back to working with athletes. So I did that for a couple of years, where I was in part of the time working at a cast physical therapy practice. And it started actually as a mobile practice. So like in-home type thing, I would bring my treatment table in my hands, and I did a lot of ART with that, and a lot of exercise education to get people feeling better. And I was doing the corporate contracts, 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And then I got connected with the OC Fit
Yeah.
in Orange City, and I was doing cash practice out of OC Fit, and that's when got to spend some time with Jaden before he went to physical therapy school. So that was fun. It was fun because I really enjoy the gym like atmosphere because I think, as opposed to like a medical clinic or a hospital atmosphere, sometimes that gym atmosphere, it just has better energy and like a positive. This is where people go to get healthy. This is this is a positive energy, a work hard facility. So I really enjoyed that. And then, Sioux Center built this dome where I'm at right now. It opened January of 2023. And then they have this open space, and Sioux Center Health decided to lease the space in here and turn it into like a physical therapy clinic. And they connected with me, and we decided that we would work together and kind of start this new hybrid clinic. And they've been awesome and supportive of me and given me a lot of autonomy just to, to build it as I've wanted to build it. So we decided we're gonna make this a true hybrid clinic. It's it's kind of especially for small town Iowa, Sioux Center, Iowa. This is like a cutting edge facility. I don't know any places even remotely close to this in small town Iowa. We have, I have access to 140 yards by 80 yards of turf right here, so we opened, our outpatient physical therapy clinic here in March of 2023. So this is a true hybrid clinic. I do traditional physical therapy here. So, I see some community members, but it's typically a very active population. But active population means different things for different people, right? I've seen 7th graders who are very active, and I've seen 58-year-olds who are very active, and everything in between. We also do we offer cash physical therapy here too, and we offer cash pay like performance training as well. And there's been, which is pretty awesome that we're able to do all those things. We have it. My space here is set up like a gym. I have 2 rogue racks right there. We have dumbbells, kettlebells, a lot of boxes and trap bar and, the things that you'd have in the gym, which is a lot of fun because, a lot of when you start, and Jane, you can probably attest to this too, a lot of times when you're like, when I'm rehabbing, a college athlete, a lot of the sessions start out looking like physical therapy, and then you get a couple months in and it doesn't look like physical therapy. It looks like weightlifting. And so it's nice to have a setup like this, and have access to the turf. I see a lot of athletes here, a lot of college athletes, high school athletes. And I've never had the opportunity before when I have a college softball player in here who plays third base. And she says, Andrew, I'm having, pain throwing from third to first. And I'm like, okay, let's go do it. Show me. So we'll go out onto the turf and we'll actually do that thing. And then then I can watch, how she's doing it. When does it hurt? Okay. We're going to address it this way. And then we build back up. And then by the time we're done, we're back out on the turf, doing whatever it is that he or she needs to be able to do to get back to their sport. So I've never had an opportunity like that, even with, I have friends that are in strength and conditioning. I have friends that are in performance training, and I know that when I told them, I'm like, I have this, I have access to 140 yards of turf. They're like, what? How is that even possible? And well, it's in Iowa, they're hoping to get 40 yards, and it's just like, yes, it's, we're privileged in this small town that they've been aggressive in being proactive for their, the local athletes. And I think it's going to pay huge dividends for them in the future.
Yeah, we hit on that a couple weeks ago, just how important it is to, like with Jaden has a similar background, obviously not as much experience, but like incorporating strength training or personal training and physical therapy together and like being able to be part of a whole rehab process from right after surgery to return to play stuff. So that's big time. Jane, you got a question?
Oh, for
Yeah, I was just
sure.
gonna say, like, you see kind of within the physical therapy field, the conventional PT, that I feel like burnout's been on the rise, and you see these therapists that they get
Absolutely.
overbooked. They have just constant patients all day with a very similar, I'd say, like, training program for each patient, and you just kind of get bored with the monotony. So I feel like there's a lot of good in what you're doing right now. I feel like my future career hopefully will look something like that has the strength and conditioning side. I think it's really cool. It was a blessing to be able to shadow under you, and I'm curious, from starting your own business and kind of growing that from the ground up, what the biggest lessons maybe you learned from that business and things that you've taken into this as well.
I think the biggest lessons that I've learned from, and I think it goes, it crosses professions. I don't think it's just physical therapy. It's one, never being satisfied, always trying to learn, always utilize continuing education wisely. I think, when I got my ART certification, that's opened new doors. It's utilizing your resources. Find a mentor wherever within your profession, whoever that might be. And sit down with that mentor and discuss things with them, and that's where you're going to learn and you're going to grow, and that's where you're going to, you know, open opportunities for the future. That, if you'd have told me 5 years ago that this is where I was going to be, I would have loved it, but I wouldn't have believed you if you would have said that. So, um, but yeah, I do think, you mentioned that burnout thing, and I think that is a huge issue right now in, not just physical therapy, in a lot of healthcare professions. But I think, having a little bit where I'm doing different things throughout the day makes a big difference. And I think, like I talked about, yeah, last year I was working with 10 ACL reconstructions here, and you'd be like, oh, isn't that doing the same thing? Well, similar surgeries, but every unique situation is different. I could have I can have 4 of them who had surgery on the same day, and I can have a similar plan for each of them going in. And I get into that session and it's immediately modified based on how they're doing that day. You know, what did they do the day before? How's their swelling? So it's, when you're constantly changing and modifying and making those adjustments, like, every situation is different. And that does add some uniqueness to every patient that you see or athlete that you train.
Yeah, I think a big part of being a good physical therapist is not seeing those ACLs the same. I think that's something that
Oh,
can
absolutely.
kind of get grouped into a box, and you treat people similar based on diagnoses. And like you said, they have different,
Yeah,
they sleep different, they eat different, their background's different, they're doing the
no question.
different things throughout the day. And I think it's really important just to keep things fresh and stay in the science and keep trying
Absolutely.
different things, and just have the willingness to
Absolutely.
learn from each patient and continue to grow in both the strength and conditioning
Ab-
platform and like soft tissue work, what worked, what didn't. Um,
For sure. And we're talking about those ACLs, you're going to have, some of them are going to demonstrate a glute hamstring dominant
mhm.
squat pattern, and other ones are going to be quad dominant. And those two are going to rehab completely differently. And you're going to have some that had meniscus involvement and others that don't. And everyone's going to be at different stages all the time, regardless of when their surgery was. You know, and while we're discussing that, we need to also discuss the mental aspect of an injury like that, and what that does to you as an athlete, or or as a parent. Um you I and we haven't talked about this yet, but when I ruptured my Achilles tendon 5 years ago, that was a big deal for me as a parent. I see athletes and they have a significant injury and they're out. That's a big deal for them. So I think you need to meet those patients where they are, and you need to really consider that as an important part of their rehabilitation process.
Yeah, dive a little more into that Achilles rupture. Talk about, you decided to go
Yes.
non-surgical, right? A little conservative,
Oh,
and just
yeah.
talk about that. Yeah,
Okay, so
talk about
about
that route.
okay. So about, I think it was about 6 years ago now. I was getting coerced to go play some Sunday ball with some friends at Unity Christian. And so I did. And yeah, we had been playing for about an hour and a half. And I did a quick change of direction. Felt like I got kicked right above my ankle on the back of the leg. And I turned around and looked, and there was no one there. And I knew like that what had happened. Tried to take a step, and I had nothing there, unfortunately. So I knew that I had popped my Achilles tendon. And immediately what goes through the head of me in that situation, it wasn't necessarily the pain. It wasn't necessarily, oh, this is going to be a long rehab. For me, it was more, I am a husband. I was a dad. I'm a dad. I run my own business. I'm the only employee of that own business, at that time. So for me, it was going through my head is, how am I going to work? I had a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old at the time. I'm like, how am I going to chase my kids around? So, talk about that feeling of almost helplessness initially, grieving that initially. So that was, I want to say, a pretty stressful time for me. But luckily, I've just with the experience that I have, I knew that I was going to be able to bounce back and figure it out. And I think, just being an athlete, you build resilience. And, I think that's one of the cool things about sports is, through trials, you figure it out, and you're able to persevere. And so, kind of out of necessity, I met with a couple of surgeons, and they both recommended, I think, Andrew, I think you should have your Achilles repaired. But I did a lot of research, and I found some non-surgical rehab protocols, and I chatted with a couple of people that had gone the non-surgical route. And I even went as far as I went up to the OI, and I talked to the orthotist up there, and he helped make me like a special insert into my boot with like different layers of like heel lift, so that I could immobilize my foot and ankle in the boot and help those ends of the tendon approximate. And then over time, I slowly peeled one off over 8 weeks, and allowed that tendon to heal and stretch back. And I was in my boot for probably 8-ish weeks. I think I went non-weight bearing just for a couple of days. Weight bearing, right, probably 3 or 4 days into it, struggled through it, but we did it. And it was a slow process. If you had asked me when I was going through it, if I was happy that I was going the non-surgical route, I don't know if I would have told you what I was at the time, but because it took me a while. I think it was about a year before I was probably jogging again. But with now that I've been through it, I realize how important the strength of your soleus is. And that seems to be the muscle that's most affected within the Achilles tendon rupture is your soleus, and building that strength back is so hard. When you're jogging, they say 8 times your body weight has to go through the soleus. So you think about how much strength you need to be able to, put out through your soleus to be able to jog without a compensatory pattern. But yeah, so I was able to build that back up, and yeah, now I'm out again playing with my kids and doing the things that I want to do. I haven't competed in basketball since that
Probably
time.
good. Yeah.
For that reason. I just saw, I watched what you guys posted on Sharp Training a little while ago about, when after you're done competing and then you go back to play like basketball. I was used to competing at a high level. I'm competitive. I wanted to win. I'm used to being able to perform at a certain level, and I wasn't taking it easy when I was playing basketball. And people ask me like, why do you think that tore? That's strange, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I don't think it's strange at all. I wasn't training for basketball. I hadn't been doing plyometrics. I hadn't been doing sprinting, the stuff that I was doing in the basketball game. And then I shouldn't be surprised that my body wasn't prepared for it, that my body wasn't ready. And, I had a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old that were not sleeping well. So I was getting no sleep. So I had a ton of neurological fatigue. And, when you add all those things in, that's a recipe for an injury, and that's what happened to me. So when people would ask me, I'm like, yep, doesn't surprise me. I should have been smarter about it, and that leads back to the research. What's the biggest predictor of injury? Have you guys seen this research
The sleep related one?
study, Jaden? Have they talked about it in school? It's not. The biggest predictor of injury is chronic lack of sleep. So I think it's just a neurological fatigue that happens to your body that your body's not prepared for such a high force output, and something has to give. And for me, unfortunately, it was my Achilles tendon. But like I said, I'm back to doing the things that I love to do. I'm spinning it in the backyard with my son while he's learning how to catch and run routes, and we're shooting buckets in the driveway, and I'm able to jog 3 miles and do those things that I want to do to stay active and healthy. And I'm starting to put some decent amount of weight on the bar again, which is fun for me. So
That's awesome. Kind of like, it goes back to, not to wear the strength and conditioning hat, but it's like the SAID principle, specific adaptations to impose demands. Like you can, even like me,
No
like me
question.
as someone, I like train every day. And then Brandon's wedding, I went on an impromptu 2-mile run with my sister, and I was sore for 3 days. Like you can prepare generally, but
Yeah,
absolutely,
exactly.
absolutely. Yeah, like you can prepare whatever, you can stay active, but if you're not doing the actual activity, like if you go from 0 to 100, it's probably not going to go well. So like we said, like in
Right.
that clip, like there has to be a well thought out progression, because you're not in your prime,
Absolutely.
and if you try it, you might have to find out the hard way. And that same day, for whatever reason, like this everything aligned to where that happened. And so and that's
Right.
just the way injuries happen. But like, yeah, you can have a plan in place to help alleviate that risk a little bit. But yeah, with the strength training, like, is that something that's you've always kind of included in your rehab, or is it more so as you started working with more athletes? Like, what's it been to learn more about like the strength and conditioning side and implement that more into your physical therapy?
Well, I think when you're looking at, physical therapy versus strength training, they're they're really very
Yeah.
similar if you really think about it. And Jaden can attest to that too. And I mean, you guys have all been through your own rehabilitation, so you guys can understand that too. But so when I look at strength training, I'm trying to get the maximum amount of stimulus or input with the least amount of fatigue, right? When I now look at physical therapy, I'm trying to get the maximum amount of stimulus or input with the least amount of pain, right? And then I gradually progress and modify to where I'm essentially going into strength training. For example, let's say someone has an ankle sprain, and they, because of that, their ankle hurts, they're swollen, it's stiff. Um, my number one goal is let's get the pain down, let's get their full motion back. Well, I know that I want this athlete to get back to being able to do 25 reps of single leg heel
Right.
raise, right, Jaden? 5
Yep.
out of 5 strength, 25 reps single leg heel raise. Well, they come in and they can't do any reps. It hurts too bad or whatever. I'm going to modify that exercise, whether it be like in the gym here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a rogue band and I'm going to have them do double leg heel raises, band assisted, right? And they can do those comfortably because they're getting the assistance from the band, but they're able to do that. And then over time, I'm decreasing that assistance from the band, and then I'm going to no band, double leg, and then eventually we're transitioning into single leg. So if you're looking at that, the physical therapy is very much like strength training. It's just at a modified level, right? And then you're gradually progressing up to what you would look at as traditional strength training.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, ideally you come before you get injured, but you would come to physical therapy, rehab your injury, but then continue on that therapy protocol into an exercise prescription and progression, and just keep
Exactly.
on. And it's just a continuation of physical therapy that is just preventing further injuries.
Right.
I think if you looked out from just a wider view and people stayed longer, you'd see that physical therapy and strength and conditioning have a very, very, very similar both background and job description. outside of like the early stages of PT. But
Absolutely.
I
Completely agree.
think my next question is more to like your current work environment. I know we kind of gear more towards like the washed up athlete most oftentimes, like towards like the business model and whatever. But I also think it's important to like give people good resources, you know, and it's really nice to like we've had a lot of people in Northwest Iowa or Sioux Falls or whatever that people can, you know, if they are curious in nutrition or chiropractic or whatever, right, PT or like I guess my question is like for Sioux Center or say a Western or something like that, like do they at this point like have strength coaches? Like do they have somebody that's actually like qualified? I'm not like I'm just using them because that's where you are, but I know this could be like maybe consistent with a lot of the programs around, but I don't know. Like I said, I think you're such a great resource. And I know it's hard because of like pay and all of that type of a thing and salary and positions and all of that. But like, do they have a position? Have they ever reached out to you, like working with them? Like, I just think of like when I was an athlete in high school, like, I was going to go to the morning and work out, right, and train, and then go to school and then have my practice. And then, you know, obviously for me, I would have liked to have spent more time with somebody that could have taught me like speed specific things. You know what I mean? Like top end speed, like some sort of an more individualized type training, but fitting all of that into like a day or a week or like a busy schedule or a season is really difficult. So like I was wondering if you have any type of a partnership or if that's something you've ever considered or like what does your staff look like? Is, you know what I mean? I guess that's kind of my question. I know it's a lot.
Well, as of now, I'm the only one here at the Sioux Center Health at the Dome. I don't know. I think each school manages their strength and conditioning a little bit different. You know, a Sioux Center versus a Western versus an MLC, and I think they all have kind of different situations. At this point, a lot of what I do is just I do, you know, like my junior high, 6th through 8th grade, the middle school type age. I do small group training where I'm doing a lot of, you know, strength, top end speed, power, and then I do a lot of one-on-one stuff. I think we had about 40 athletes in here this summer. And about probably 10 to 12 of those were like one-on-one high school kids.
No,
And I'm not going
yeah,
to name drop, but it was really fun. You know, we had I had some of the top high school athletes in the area coming in here and training this summer. And, you know, primarily with them, you know, everyone's goals are different because, you know, the sport they play is different. You know, I had uh, a
yeah,
state high school wrestler. I had who you're going to train completely different than I have a high school track
yeah,
runner who's a sprinter. You know, she doesn't run further than 100 meters, you know, so, you know, you're going to train those people completely different. So I always, you know, when it's just one-on-one things, I like to sit down with them and say, you know, what are your individual goals? Let's sit down with you and your parents. Let's look at this. What are your goals? And then, you know, I write something up that I feel like will help that athlete take it to the next level. And again, that look a little bit different for everyone. And that, you know, those high school or college athletes, that's going to look different than what the junior high, you know, setting that foundation. But I'm big into utilizing metrics and utilizing numbers and I think what you measure tends to get better, right? So we're constantly utilizing those things and numbers to, you know, help motivate kids and help them try to take their game to the next level. So to answer your question, I think each school is a little bit different as far as, you know, who they utilize for the strength and conditioning. I think it's who's qualified on their staffs, if they have someone that's qualified, or if they contract out to an external source. I think each one, as far
yeah.
as I know, is a little bit different in regards to that.
Yeah, it's just interesting.
What's it been like? I'm just curious what it's been like. I mean, going from working with mostly like adults for a large part of your career to now working with a lot of kids and training them. I guess what have you learned from coaching kids now as it's a newer part of your job, and what's that experience been like?
I mean, I always have treated young athletes throughout um, my PT career. I saw young athletes in Spencer. I helped coach high school football when my wife was teaching at Sioux Central. So, you know, and obviously I have a lot of family members that are
Yeah.
all ages. So it's, I don't want to say that I didn't ever work with younger athletes. So I think I had a pretty good feel, and just having children of my own, I kind of knew some of the expectations going into it. That you just gonna have to structure things a little bit differently. I think it was a priority for me, that I did not want my groups to be very big. I wanted to be able to give individual attention. I set things up so that I can have one or two athletes, doing the activity or exercise on their own or simultaneously while the others are doing an accessory activity. Keeping everyone busy is an important factor, keeping everyone busy so that they don't get distracted. But also, I want to make sure I have eyes on them at all times so that what they're doing is safe, that they're not utilizing any equipment the way that it shouldn't be utilized from a safety standpoint. But I also, I think it's super important, especially when you're dealing with young kids, to set the expectations early. That my first day in these performance groups, I sit down and I talk with the kids, and I say, here are the numbers we're going to test you today. My expectation is that we get 5 to 10% better after the 6 or 8 weeks, and that's where we've been traditionally. And I keep modifying things to try to get better, because I'm competitive with myself and I want to have better improvement. If we can get over 10%, I want to get over 10%. And I tell them, you can see on my board, you can't really, it looks backwards here, but it's just train with
Yeah.
intent. And, and I try to coach, where we're not doing a huge volume of things. I'm not just going to do things to make people tired. We're going to prime the engines. We're going to activate. We're going to, our working phase might be 4 fly 10s, but those 4 fly 10s are going to be at 100%. Or as close to 100% as you can get. Because for me, when we're working those powerful movements, the sprinting, jumping as high as you can, if you're not getting above the 95%, we're not going to be forcing the CNS system to adapt, and we're not going to be getting faster. We're not going to be jumping higher. If you want to get your 100% vertical higher, you need to be jumping at 100%. And if you're not, you're just not going to get better. So I set those expectations early. And they hear me say, frequently, hey, we need to train with intent. Are you jumping as high as you can get? You need to jump as high as you can, or you need to run as fast as you can, or you're not going to see the improvements. And, a lot of the kids that, if they've been through, a program that we've had, they know those expectations. But at the same time, when you're training with those young kids, you can throw in a lot of competitions and make it fun. We do a lot of racing stuff. We do a lot of tag type stuff where you do a lot of chasing. We do, we're doing sled push, we're doing sled pulls, we're doing, resistance bands, we're doing med ball, throws, and it's stuff. And you can turn that stuff into competitions, and people love to compete, and not just, raises the bar for everyone.
Curious, do you have any like sources or mentors in either the PT or strength and conditioning world that you'd like to shout out? Kind of my own personal interest.
Well, when I took this position, then when we were exploring the opportunity to start like some of the youth programming stuff, I reached out to a lot of resources when it comes to like the strength and conditioning world. I have first of all, Coach Ox at Northwestern let me come into the weight room, and I got to go in there and observe. And he was really good to me. I got to ask him a lot of questions and bounce ideas off of him. And just watching, I think, was a really good experience. And you guys can attest to this. The more volume of information you take in, you can take bits and pieces and be like, oh, I really like that. That's really good for this. And then, I played with Willie Jones, who's a strength and conditioning coach at University of Minnesota, works with Cal Dietz, so I called Willie and I picked his brain for a couple of hours, and, what are things you really like? What do you think is really important for this specific age, junior high versus high school, how do you lay that foundation? And then I have the other guy I played with, Paul Amundsen. He's, you can find him on YouTube, Simple Speed Coach. He's got a speed gym out in Windsor, Colorado, and he trains a lot of high level athletes out there, and he's awesome at what he does. And I picked his brain. So I think it's just, and like even even Colin, when was it? A couple weeks ago, I had one of my high school athletes, and he was, I think there's a gap right now sometimes between rehabilitation and actual like contact sports, right? So you're like, you can pass all the return to sport tests, but does that specifically mean that you're going to be able to run full speed and collide with somebody, or be able to push and pull and do all those things you need to be able to do for a full contact sport? So I reached out to Colin because, I went to the strength and conditioning conference at Northwestern, and Justin Lima, who you guys just had on here, presented on that contact preparation stuff. And Colin referred me to that YouTube page because I wanted something from a contact prep standpoint, and Colin referred me to the Elon's YouTube information. And now I'm like implementing that for all of my athletes that are of any type of contact, football, soccer, lacrosse, basketball is a big one, just to really prepare them as good as possible, because it's one thing for you to run and jump and cut on air, and it's another thing to do it when you're be in contact with someone, in all different directions. So I think those are all people that resources that I've utilized. And I think from a physical therapy standpoint, all my coworkers, when you get into the professional world, I think it's always important to bounce ideas off of people and be like, what do you think? Am I missing this? What is, I need to take this to the next level. Do you have any ideas, or have you ever seen this? So I think it's, although my physical therapist coworkers that I've had in the past, and my clinical instructors dating back to when I was in PT school, I think, I still, a couple times a year, send a text message to some of them and just, see how they're doing, see if they know of any good continuing education courses or anything like that, just to, take your experience to the next level. And that kind of goes on with, what I talked about before, never being, satisfied with where you're at, and always, okay, I got a good feel on this, but how can I make it better? And, how can I make this better for my patients? What metrics can I use for my young athletes to raise their game up to the next level? And also, I should give a shout out to Dort. They let me use their Sparta Force plate when I'm testing the kids. And you talk about a sweet piece of equipment that cranks out metrics upon metrics, hundreds of numbers, and from power output to eccentric to isometric to concentric, on the counter movement jump, and all that good stuff that like is super valuable. And I have 11-year-old kids jumping on this stuff, and sometimes I don't think they know how good they have it, just seeing some of that. And but that stuff all gets me super excited. The sports science part of it, I don't know, I'm kind of a numbers guy, so when I'm talking about percentages, and the gentleman from Nebraska who presented at Northwestern's performance strength and conditioning camp, it was awesome to hear about how they're using metrics, on a daily basis, to see, for, almost to prevent overuse and overtraining type injuries. And that stuff really intrigues me. And I think I think there's a lot of potential for that in the future. And I think you're going to see that trickling down from the big schools to schools at all levels in the near future.
I'm curious, do you see a lot of variation in that, like return to sport protocol, or is that all kind of your jurisdiction? I know like some of our professors have kind of talked about their likes and dislikes with like maybe just measuring like concentric based to your healthy side for like an ACL, and that's not enough to bring somebody back, just stuff like that.
Well, that's definitely not, so definitely like, not, but I think it depends on the surgeon. It depends on the surgeon and, where they come from. Like Avera and Sioux Falls and Sanford, they have their own like return to competition testing protocols that they go through at certain, time frames after your surgery. They test you at 5 months and at 6 months, and, just kind of see where you're at with multiple different things. And it's not just isometric. It's a lot of different things with, that jumping and change of direction jumping and force production and a lot of stuff like that. So I think the science continues to get better with that stuff. And, where I see it progressing is like what I talked about is I like adding some of that contact preparation stuff in there. I think that just takes all that stuff to the next level. Stuff you can't really simulate in traditional physical therapy, but I'll get them out on the turf and they're doing bear crawls and they're pushing me. And, especially for those basketball players, soccer players, and football players, I think that is just invaluable. And I don't think it gets any better than that when they get to that point of their rehab.
For sure. Any other questions?
Yeah.
guys?
My last thing too is like, I think you said, well, I just think like when you were talking about the force plate and everything, and like, I really don't think kids really know how good they do have it, now, like the amount of information and like even the numbers you're talking about, like, and you get this too. It used to be just a thing where it was so like gray, right? It was just like this random workload, you just go in the weight room and you work hard, and work hard was just such a like not able to be grasped thing. And I don't know if you'll ever be able to grasp it, but like
Till you're tired.
it's a lot more tangible than it used to. Yeah, till you're tired, till you can't like touch your head, it curls until you can't shower anymore. Used to be the standard. So, but like, I think there's so many more metrics, and it's so much easier to be analyzed, and there's such a more efficient way to protect your body, like find the balance in working hard and also staying healthy and all of those things. And so, I don't know, I work with a lot of high school kids. I've worked with, when I was at the arena, a lot of kids that are in college now. Like, I would employ, if you're still listening or whatever, like, or if you see this, to go see Andrew. I think you're a great resource, dude. I've learned a lot just from listening to you, and even have a greater appreciation for how good of a resource you are in Northwest Iowa for kids that, don't have a ton of that. I mean, that's just so invaluable to be able to drive, less than 30 minutes to a great facility, to somebody that's played a Division I sport, to someone that has ART, a possibility, that in their arsenal, to the strength conditioning side, to the speed work side. Like, I don't know whether it's a summer where you come back, or whether it's, something doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know. I don't think it gets much better than to go, just reach out. What's the best way that people can find you? Is it like through the website, or is it through social media? Or I know that's a part of small business, but like what's the best way for athletes, or even a non-athlete, even someone that's just, trying to move better or struggling with something, to find you or connect with you?
Well, they can just call me here at the Dome, or call our Sioux Center Health front desk. The number is 712-722-8125. And I appreciate you saying all that stuff, Brandon. That's very kind of you. But I do offer like a pre-screening process for local athletes too. So like they can schedule a 30-minute session and just drop in, and it doesn't. And I think people always think it
Yeah.
has to be big things. And I always tell them I like
Yeah.
the little things, because the little things are what prevent the big things. I had, a kid last year, a high school kid, good athlete, really hard worker. He was just having some knee pain with squatting. So he was having some knee pain with squatting. So I came in here. He signed up for one of the free screenings. So I checked out his knee, and I was able to know within, just a few minutes. I'm like, his knee's fine. He doesn't have a knee issue. All right, let's get him in the squat rack. Let's watch him squat. Well, his closed chain dorsiflexion was
Yeah.
not very good, and his hip internal rotation was
Yeah.
like less than 10 degrees. So I was like, all right, well, let's try these things. So we showed him a dorsiflexion mobilization, and I said, let's try this hip internal rotation mobilization. Let's do this for a couple of weeks. Come back and stop in and check in with me. And in a couple of weeks, he came back in and he's like, yeah, my squat's up 40 pounds. And it wasn't necessarily that he got stronger. He
Yeah.
was just able to move better, and pain is something that will completely, it almost shuts down your muscles to where they can't
For
exert
sure.
as much force. So if you can get something feeling better, you're going to see your numbers explode. So for him, that was kind of the case. And it was one of those things I'm like, hey man, I'm glad you came to see me, because if you had just kept squatting that way, who knows what would have happened? He probably would have developed,
Yep.
a more chronic inflammation of the knee, or he would have been compensating as he was going heavy and twisted his back and would have, slowed himself down from that sense. So, I think there's a lot of value into, just having even if it's a brief conversation, consultation, and just see if there's anything quick that we can find just to help prevent the
Yeah.
big things from happening
Yeah.
as much as you can.
Well said. appreciate you hopping on, Andrew, and sharing some knowledge. Keep doing
Yeah.
good work, and hopefully, hopefully more Northwest Iowa athletes reach out, and athletes and non-athletes reach out and get their bodies right. So appreciate you, cuz.
Yeah. Thanks, fellas. Thanks for having me. It was
Yes,
good
sir.
seeing all you guys
For
again.
sure. Till next time.